Today we're focusing on heart anatomy. The question is this: if the heart is a muscular pump, and it is, what can we do then? What are some things that we can do to help improve our heart health and maybe even our pump efficiency? So if we understand that the heart is a muscular pump, we understand the heart anatomy, maybe it will help us better understand how it works and how to keep it healthy for us. So let's first take a look at where the heart's located. So this is all ventral cavity. You might remember that from earlier. Ventral cavity is front cavity of the body. The upper part is the thoracic cavity. The lower part, the abdominal cavity. The thoracic cavity is divided into several sections: pleural for the lungs, pericardial for the heart. And the heart is located, the center of this cavity, pericardial cavity. It's about the size of your fist. So it looks like this. Sits in your chest like that. About the size of your fist. So that's a pretty accurate anatomical model of what the heart would be like. Exercise your heart because it's a muscle. Get that heart big and strong. Use your heart, and maybe you'll have one like mine. Super big. Let's take a look at some of these heart parts and what they do. So the heart has a lining that has three distinct layers to it. So this outside, the sac surrounding the heart, is called the pericardium. Peri just means covering. Cardia means heart, so this outer sac is a pericardium. Then you have this inner part inside here, that's the endocardium, the inside part of the heart. And finally the muscular layer, this middle muscular layer, myocardium. I think of it kind of like a sandwich. Two pieces of bread, mayonnaise in the middle. Myo means muscle, myocardium like mayonnaise in the middle. Para means covering, like outer covering. Endo on the inside part of the heart, the endocardium. So what's the name of the cavity where the heart's located? Here's a picture of the heart. The cavity is the pericardial cavity. So the pericardial cavity. So here again is our thoracic region with the heart right inside, just behind your sternum. Now, the heart's divided into several different sections or segments or parts. So you can see, like, we have a left and right side of the heart. Left and right side of the heart. We have an upper and lower side of the heart, atrium and ventricle sides. And we have this septum right here dividing the ventricles, the left and right ventricles. We can tell that the atrium mostly because it's just where the blood enters the heart. So think of like an atrium, kind of like a foyer, or even in some buildings they have a big atrium where you first walk into the doorways. In order to get into the heart, you come into the atrium, this first room that you enter. So the blood enters in the atrium, smaller walls, because they're only pumping the blood from the top of the heart to the bottom. So they don't have to be super muscular, just has to move the blood from the top chambers to the bottom chambers. The ventricles are much more muscular in the walls because they're pumping the blood much further. So again, we can take a close look and we'll see that the right ventricle, slightly thinner wall, the left ventricle, very thick wall, because the right ventricle will circulate the blood to the lungs, the left ventricle will circulate the blood to the body. So it needs to be nice and strong to get that strong circulation all around the body. So the ventricle is larger, more muscular, the atrium smaller, a little thinner in the walls. Let's take a look at some of the major parts of the heart, some of the main parts. We'll just start right up here, kind of work our way around. here's the atrium again, these upper chambers. All right, so that's the atrium, these upper chambers. So there's an atrium, there's an atrium. One of the keys to remember whenever you're looking at the heart or identifying parts of the heart is you have to think about the heart in your body. So if the heart's in my body, the left side of the heart is the left side of my body, and the right side of the heart is the right side of my body. Even when I look at the diagram, I have to kind of picture that heart in my body. So if I picture that heart in my body, this is the right atrium because it's on the right side. This is the left atrium because it's on the left side. So then this down here, that's going to be the right ventricle. This here is going to be the left ventricle, pumping blood to the body. So then I have lots of different veins and arteries that the blood is moving through. So when blood enters the heart, it's going to come in through the vena cava, so the inferior means below, inferior vena cava, or from above, the superior vena cava. So this blood is coming into the heart. Deoxygenated blood from the body being cycled through the heart, through the vena cava, into the right atrium. Then we have this large blood vessel, the aorta, here where blood is going out of the heart. So blood leaves the heart from the left ventricle through the aorta to circulate around the body. But notice that it branches right away. So here's a large artery taking blood away from the heart, but it branches right away. We have the first branch, brachiocephalic. So the brachiocephalic, that's going to go, think brachium, so that's an arm area. Cephalic, that's the head. So it's going to go up a little bit and then branch. One branch is going to go over toward the arm. The other branch is going to go up toward the head. Then here we have the left common carotid, which is going to go up to the left side of the head. And then here we have the left subclavian, that's going to go to the left arm. Then the aorta continues down, down, down to the abdomen and all the major internal organs that way. But we also have some other blood vessels. We have blood circulating this way. So blood is going this way to the lungs. So it can go either to the left lung or the right lung. From the lungs, we have blood coming in this way from the left pulmonary veins or through the right pulmonary veins. All right, so blood is coming back into the heart through the pulmonary veins. So let's see what we've got. Make sure we got most of the things here. We've got the vena cava, so that's good. We've got the atrium. We've got the pulmonary arteries. We've got the superior vena cava and the brachiocephalic, common carotid, subclavian, aorta, pulmonary arteries, pulmonary trunk, the left atrium, the left ventricle, the heart layers, myocardium, endocardium, pericardium, the septum in the middle. And what's left is the valves. In order to go from one chamber to the next, the blood has to pass through a valve. So here's a valve, here's a valve. Then we have valves in the major arteries and veins. So there's a valve you can see in that heart model. So let's take a look at these major valves. To go from the atrium to the ventricle, we go through an atrioventricular valve, sometimes referred to as AV, like the right atrioventricular valve, or the left atrioventricular valve. We're going through a valve. All right, so we're moving through that atrioventricular valve. So from the atrium to the ventricle. In order to get into a blood vessel, it's a little bit different. Going through a blood vessel, you go through a semilunar valve. Semilunar is like a moon, like a half moon shape or a part moon shape. So the semilunar valve takes us to the lungs, pulmonary semilunar, or in this case, what we can see in this model, the aortic semilunar valve. All right, so out the aortic semilunar valve into the aorta. So let's see how much we might remember from that and identify some of those parts. So let's go through some of the major blood vessels again. Inferior vena cava, superior vena cava. Here we have the aorta. Remember, the aorta does some branching. Brachiocephalic here. Then we have a common carotid, subclavian. Over here we have a pulmonary artery, which is going to branch off, going to the lungs here, going to the lungs here. So here we have the right pulmonary arteries, left here. Here we have the returning, so left pulmonary veins, right pulmonary veins. Here we have the right atrium. Here we have the left atrium. Here we have the right ventricle. Here we have the left ventricle. Here we have the septum. The layers pericardium, myocardium, inside is endocardium. Look at the valves then. Here we have an atrioventricular valve. Here we have an atrioventricular valve. In this case, right atrioventricular valve, or right AV. This is the left atrioventricular valve. Now, sometimes you might have heard other names for those valves. For example, sometimes people call them, instead of the atrioventricular valves, they might call them tricuspid and bicuspid valve. That has to do with these down here. The cusps that attach it, tricuspid or bicuspid. Sometimes even though left is called the mitral valve. So it's just all kinds of different names for those. But for our purposes, we'll just stick with right and left atrioventricular valves. Why is it important then that we have 4 chambers to the heart? Like, why is 4 chambers so necessary? What's the advantage of the 4 chambers as opposed to 3 or 2? So there's different living things in the world that have maybe 3 chambers in their heart, like frogs, or 2 chambers in their heart, like fish. Why the 4 chambers? What's the physiological benefit of that? One major benefit is that the oxygenated blood stays separated from the deoxygenated blood. Blood with oxygen stays separated from the blood without, so that there's no mixing. So that the blood without oxygen can be circulated to the lungs, get oxygen, come back into the heart full of oxygen, and then be circulated around the body. So those 2 circuits are important. One circuit is called the pulmonary circuit, the other is called the systemic circuit. So notice again what's happening here. We have blood from the body entering the heart. As it enters the heart, it's going to go through the right atrium, right ventricle, and then it's going to be pumped to the lungs, right here to the pulmonary artery, there to the lungs, get loss of oxygen from the lungs. Then it's going to re-enter the heart. Now it's coming into the left atrium, and then left ventricle, and now that blood with all that oxygen gets pumped by that really strong left ventricle to cycle around the body. Let's take a look again. Here's the same kind of thing, just another look at it. So here's the heart. Blood from the body enters the heart to the right atrium, right ventricle, circulates to the lungs where it can pick up lots of oxygen. Now back into the heart, left atrium, left ventricle, circulates around the body where it can carry that oxygen to the cells that desperately need that oxygen to survive, do cellular respiration, and all those wonderful things that it needs for energy with the oxygen. Here's a close-up of some of those valves, the atrioventricular valves here, the semilunar valves there. This is a close-up on how those valves work. When those valves close, that's what we hear when we hear our heartbeat, the lubs and the dubs. That's the valves shutting as blood goes through and is unable to go backwards. So it's very important that blood can only go one way. Leaky valves create lots of trouble, lots of problems in our body. So it's good to have those valves closing off nice and strong so that the blood can move into the correct chamber and not leak back. So the pulmonary circuit is when blood's going through the right side of the heart, and then it's being pumped, the heart pumps it into the lungs. Pulmonary with lungs. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation, that P, pulmonary, means the lungs. The systemic circuit means we're going to the body systems, like we're circulating all around the body to the body systems. That's the left side of the heart. So blood enters from the lungs into the left atrium, left ventricle, get that strong pump, then can circulate around the body. It's important that those body cells get lots of oxygen from the lungs. So smoking sometimes inhibits some of that and causes some difficulty with it. But filling our lungs with oxygen can help the heart circulate that good oxygenated blood, get it to our body and the cells that need it. So here again, we're taking a look at the systemic and pulmonary circuit. A little more detail here, where we have blood entering the heart from the body, circulating to the lungs, where we get gas exchange, lots of good oxygen. Now from the right side to the lungs, enters the blood into the left side, left atrium, left ventricle, circulates through the aorta, all around the body that can exchange that carbon dioxide and oxygen, get lots of good oxygen to the cells that need it so badly. But the heart is also a muscle just like the muscle in the rest of your body, and it needs that oxygen so it can keep going with the cellular respiration in order to maximize its ATP use and not stop beating, which would be really bad for anybody if the heart stopped beating. So the heart is a muscle, and just like a muscle, it needs to be exercised. Just like a muscle, it's going to need oxygen too, and it's going to need blood too. So here's a picture of how the heart gets some blood. Notice that there's lots and lots and lots of blood constantly supplying the heart so it can keep doing that aerobic respiration, so it can keep maximizing our ATP use. And it's important to keep those blood vessels clear of fatty buildup. So cholesterol in our diet sometimes causes those arteries to fill with plaque and makes it hard for the heart to deliver blood to itself, which can cause a lot of problems. Of course, we call that coronary, like a coronary heart attack, if those coronary blood vessels get blocked. Let's take a look at some of the things, some of the ways that the heart circulates blood. So here again, superior vena cava. Down here, inferior vena cava. Over here, aorta are major blood vessels. Here we have the pulmonary veins taking blood to the lungs. Here we have the pulmonary trunk. Sorry, that's taking blood. Here we have the pulmonary veins getting blood. Here we have the pulmonary trunk sending blood to the lungs. Here we have the left coronary artery. So this branch right from the aorta delivers blood directly to the heart. Left coronary vein is going to collect that deoxygenated blood, deposit it right into the vena cava. So on this side, we have the right coronary artery. This is why coronary is such a major blood vessel, because that's the main way, the main route that our heart gets blood. And that vein is the main way that that blood gets taken back into the heart to be recycled. So it's important to keep that clear of plaque and buildup. But it often does get clogged, which is why it's so severe, because if that heart muscle doesn't get that blood, that heart muscle dies, and that becomes scar tissue, and then our heart becomes weaker and weaker. Eventually it might not work anymore. So it's very important to keep those clear. So be careful what you eat. Label some parts of the heart. This right here, superior vena cava, here. You know it already? inferior vena cava. This here is pointing to the valve that's going to the lungs, pulmonary semilunar. This here is pointing to the valve in between the atrium and ventricle, bicuspid, two cusps there. That's going to make the other the tricuspid. I remember it this way. Tricuspid is the right side. T-R-I, cuspid. And T-R-I, those letters are in R-I-G-H-T, right. So it helps me remember the right side is the tricuspid, the left side is the bicuspid. Papillary muscle in the heart, cardiac muscle. Remember that's the myocardium, that middle layer is where most of that cardiac muscle is. Involuntary muscle, you can't control it as much as you might like to. And dividing the heart is the septum. Now we get to perform a little bit of surgery. Let's put this guy's heart back together. So here's our patient. He needs that heart put back together so his blood can circulate and so he can be all right. So let's first find these large muscular ventricles. Remember, the right ventricle is going to go on the right side of the body. Left ventricle goes on the left side of the body. Then we have the atrium, the right atrium here. Attach the right ventricle to it. Here's our left atrium. We'll attach our left ventricle to it. Then we're going to attach our pulmonary artery, which takes blood to the lungs. And we're going to attach our aorta, which delivers blood to the body. And let's see if we can resuscitate our patient. And there we have it. He's a happy camper, and we are a successful surgeon. Thanks again for watching.